my name is Yoshimichi Nakatsuka. I'm from UC Irvine, and today I'll be talking about VICEROY. This is a joint collaboration between my colleagues, Scott, me, Erjun, and Jean Tudik from UC Irvine, and Andrew Pavard from Microsoft. So I am pretty sure that you have heard about GDPR and CCPA and a whole smacking of others while attending this conference, but I'll briefly give an introduction to it. So these are data protection regulations, and it gives a lot of, it provides a lot of legal rights to consumers like us to an ability to exercise them. And the most notable legal right is the ability to access, modify, or delete the personally identifiable information collected by these businesses that you have interacted with. So, because of the nature of this data, the services or websites must authenticate that the user that is contacting the service is actually the correct user or the rightful owner of this data. And in order to do this, they usually send out something called a verifiable consumer request, or VCR. And this is very simple if you have an account on that website. So what you have to do is to simply provide your login information, and then the website will be able to understand that you are the correct owner of this data. However, GDPR and CCPA actually allows the same right to be exercised by consumers who do not have an account on these websites. So for instance, if you browse a website that you don't have an account on, or simply you're logged out on your account, or for example, you're using incognito mode and you're browsing that website, the websites are still collecting the data, but they are not associated to your account. So the question is, okay, how do these websites authenticate these people? Well, there are a lot of different ways that these services employ. For example, they ask for government-issued IDs such as driver's licenses, have the consumer engage in a signed statement, or ask them their credit card number, or have them involved in a phone interview. But obviously, as you can see, these are ad hoc, insecure, or privacy-invasive at best. So you might be wondering, well, why don't you use cookies, right? Because these cookies is unique to the session that you have generated, and therefore, if you can provide a cookie when you are submitting the VCR request, you should be able to prove that you are the rightful owner. Well, this is actually an interesting idea, and it actually is in the point of view of privacy, because the server does not know anything on top of what it has issued to the consumer, because what they're giving back is what they have generated. However, there are several issues of using cookies as authentication token. First of all, the cookie might not have any randomness into it. So in authentication cookies, these are mandatory. However, in regular cookies, there are no randomness that is required to be put in. So an attacker might be able to just simply guess a cookie and then submit a VCR on your behalf. Also, because cookies become an authentication cookie, they have to now be transmitted through a secure tunnel and be securely stored on the client side. And this is because the cookies are symmetric in nature. So in our work, we created a VICEROY, which is a framework that allows accountless consumers to issue a VCR in a secure and a privacy-preserving manner. And specifically what VICEROY does is that it does not rely on symmetric tokens such as cookies, and also allows the VCRs to be generated in a usable and secure manner. Sorry. Oh yeah. Sorry. I can't actually see that much in this the thing, so I will try to be as yeah. Thank you so much. Yes. Another feature of VICEROY is that it can be integrated into the websites in a very easy manner. It does not require a huge modification on the server side. Okay, so from now on, I'll be talking a little bit about how VICEROY works. So in our framework, we introduce 3 entities: a trusted consumer device, which holds on to, securely stores a secret, a client device where you do your normal browsing activities, and the server that you contact when you do the browsing activities. So VICEROY consists of 3 phases. In the first phase, which is the setup phase, the consumer would use its trusted consumer device, generate a master private key, and then plugs it in or communicates with the consumer, the regular consumer device, and generates a device unique public key from the master private key. In the next phase, which is like your normal browsing phase, your trusted consumer device is no longer needed. What happens is that the consumer device would use that device unique public key, would generate a new fresh public key from it, send this public key over to the server, and then the server would generate something called a cookie wrapper. And essentially, a cookie wrapper is a digital signature over the cookie and the private key that was sent over to the server in the beginning. So at the finally, and when the consumer decides that it wants to exercise its GDPR or CCPA rights, what it would do is that it would reintroduce the trusted consumer device, plug it into the consumer device, and then have the consumer device send a request and a cookie over to the consumer device, trusted consumer device. And this device would then generate a digital signature over these data using the private key that was sent over to the server in the previous phase. Now, what the consumer has to do is to send this request over to the server, and that the server will be able to verify that this is the rightful owner of this cookie and the data that it has collected. Now, let me talk a little bit about key management, because as you have seen in the previous slide, there are a lot of keys that I have introduced. So obviously, the challenge here is that the client has to store all these keys and also at the same time manage these keys as well. How do we do this in a very easy manner? Well, we use something called the derivable asymmetric key, and a very notable implementation of this is called BIP32, or Bitcoin Improvement Protocol Proposal 32. This allows, so I'll show you how this works. So there are different keys that can be generated from a master secret key that I have shown. And by using these paths, as they call, the secret key can be used to generate a public key. And then the public key then can be used to generate a session-specific public key. Note here that there aren't any secret key involved during this generation. And when it comes to the VCR request, what the client has to do is to generate the secret key counterpart of that public key that it has set. Now, this actually is very good because, first of all, now the client only has to keep track of the red key that is shown in the figure. And this can be stored if you want to have maximum security in a trusted consumer device, and it is not needed until the consumer wants to send out a VCR request. Also, at the same time, you can see that we can generate a lot of these blue keys, and therefore VICEROY supports multiple devices. We have implemented VICEROY in a lot of entities we have implemented from end to end, but I would like to note here that we actually have implemented VICEROY using an actual trusted consumer device in a hardware dongle called Soloki. This is a resource-limited device. It has a CPU that runs in 80 megahertz. The RAM is 64 kilobytes, and the ROM is 256 kilobytes. So in our paper, we have conducted a couple of security analysis. The first two security analysis, which is on forgeability and replay resistance, is proven using a formal prover called the Tamron prover. For our unlinkability property, we have conducted a manual inspection and then proved that it holds. So I would like to report a little bit some numbers for VICEROY. So if you are engaging in regular browsing activities, the latency that it introduces is minimal. It's in the order of tens of milliseconds. However, if you are engaging in the VCR request, the generation of VCR takes about 1.3 seconds. And this is because we are using this resource-limited device. So I would like to note that this will be in upper bound. If you are using a more powerful device like your smartphone or regular computer, this number would obviously be going down. Data transfer required for the VICEROY protocol is minimal. It is in the order of 1 kilobyte. And we have also conducted an survey and estimated that an entire year of VICEROY usage only requires the client to store 23 megabytes of data. So this is not an issue for the client as well. Now, VICEROY leads us to a lot of interesting open research questions. So first of all, as I have said, VICEROY does not leak any information. However, this is not true once we start to think about metadata such as IP addresses. So in our paper, we recommend any user that is highly privacy conscious to use a VICEROY over anonymity networks like Tor, or we also envision using TEs or PIRs on the server side to hide any data that has been requested by the client. There is a very interesting issue called the shared device, regarding shared device, which is also known as the rooming problem. So for instance, let's say that you are watching a TV show on front of a smart TV, with two people, and this smart TV is not logged into an account or anything. How can we know that who is the right owner of this data that has been collected? And this is a very interesting and difficult problem to solve. We have shown a couple of ideas in our paper as well. And a very interesting point is about the cookie support. So currently, VICEROY only supports first-party cookies, but we do want to extend VICEROY so that we'll be able to support third-party cookies so that it allows consumers to be able to request data collected by third parties like advertising networks. And then last but not least, VICEROY introduces multiple new business opportunities. And the one thing that I would like to highlight here is the idea called VCR as a service. So for example, let's say there is a trusted third party where the consumer will rely on, which would send VCR on its behalf so that they don't have to deal with all this mess. So with that, I would like to conclude my talk. Today, I have showed our framework called VICEROY, and we have shown that VICEROY is designed to be able to withstand a lot of different challenges, and also at the same time, we have shown that it's able to plug in into the web ecosystem in a very limited amount of overhead. We have implemented VICEROY using a lot of different entities, and our experiments show that it only introduces a very small amount of overhead. So our implementation of the entire VICEROY protocol and the Tamron proofs are all open sourced on GitHub, and that will conclude my talk. Thank you for listening.
I think one point that I was not sure is that I currently we already have some database or protocols I often, and I also find my bit. So, for example, if you make a key, then there is a mode where the server entering the key handle, and you make a store or not store it, and also you use some effort to derive a lot of time key or so. So the question I'm going to ask is, how is VICEROY method or different and
That is an excellent question. We actually have a part in paper that discuss differences between web and VICEROY. So I'll here. First of all, web authn is website, and I can remember you said there is keys, but that's now totally that way out of survey. Often and mostly its key is associated. However, for VICEROY, we want to add section-specific key. So even you have multiple sessions. So let's say I visited a website A today, and you have visited website A tomorrow. These two sections should generate keys. And VICEROY is the only way to be using web auditability to prevent. I hope that answers your question.
And then my question one is, maybe I didn't ask for a question.
Why is the last thing you will? Sorry, why is it people
Become super sessions fully?
Yes, so that's a very, very great question. It's very because we want to introduce as if it's disease, public key over again, and it's actually things together. And we wanted to provide the maximum possible, obviously, as I said, IP addresses, all the identities, and these sessions together. But if you are using this for the name and money to have
Maybe allowing us to about the question, you've already come there, and you pretty much collapsed on how they both is. I think I'm leaving it with VICEROY as letter ID and had of ideas about what you guys can do with this.
Yes, it's a very interesting area. So first of all, VICEROY is supposed to be, like I said, first party to concern relationships. But once you start to multiple parties, there is an interesting question that arises. So it is supposed to send these requests. Is the consumer supposed to send the request over to third parties that the first party interacts with? Or is the first party supposed to contact third parties on the consumers? So VICEROY itself can support third parties, but these issues that remain sort of makes it before you more reaction thinking about how we support it, you have to crunch down employees and necessary properties. Market.